Well, ladies and gents, you join me again for yet another test ride. I still haven't got a bike. I still need to get a bike. And if I'm looking at middleweight adventurers, I can't possibly walk past a Yamaha Tenere 700. So here I have in front of me, sadly showing how the dealerships mostly want to push their own agenda and ignore the instructions of the customers. I have the Tenere 700 World Raid. I actually asked to ride a normal Tenere. This is what they rolled out for me. So there you go. I'm going to take it where I can get it. I've always wanted to have a go on one of these beasties anyway, so let's go and see if this, or maybe the smaller version of this, could be my next bike. 700cc, two-cylinder cross-plane engine, 700cc thereabouts, 690 I think to be more accurate. And the World Raid over the standard version has upgraded suspension, these two massive tanks at the front giving an extra, I think, 8 litres of fuel capacity. It's also got a steering damper. Apparently it's got a slightly more comfortable seat, fatter foot pegs, TFT display as standard, but of course the 2023 model of the Yamaha Tenere 700 also comes with a TFT display. Off-switchable ABS from the switch down there, a USB socket, nothing to do with UBS here. It has cabled throttle, no traction control on the back, and it sounds pretty good so far. It's also got a slightly bigger screen on the front and some built-in frame protection as well, which is quite nice. But anyway, yeah, sadly due to the demise of my KTM 1090, I'm in the market for a new bike, and the prices of KTM 1090s right now are a bit ridiculous, so much so that it almost makes more sense to get something new than it does to get something old. So I've been given a nice little recommended tour by the dealership there, Tizius und Reimers, here in Hamburg. I'm going to go and give this thing a little stretch and see how it feels. Considering it's only got 700 cc's, it does pick its skirts up, to be honest, especially considering the World Raid here is actually 16 kilos heavier than the standard Tenere. If that's a noticeable difference, then I look forward to getting a go on the standard Tenere, on which the power to weight ratio is obviously going to be even more favourable. But here I am, purring along in 5th gear, 4,000 RPM, 82 kilometers per hour. And I can pick it up without shifting down, not bad. And also at this 4,000 RPM in 5th gear, vibrations are impressively minimal. Switch down into 4th gear, we're up at 4,500 RPM now. Slight buzz through the foot pegs, nothing through the seat. The most minuscule, tiny buzz through the handlebars perhaps. Yeah, that's really impressive that such a little motor is putting out that feeling of speed, that feeling of power, because to be completely honest with you, I really do not care how fast a bike is, as long as it feels fast. That's all that really matters, isn't it? How fast you feel like you're riding. 6th gear roll on from 100. Yeah, no head shaking, no protestations from the motor. Just pushes on. That's pretty impressive. To be honest as well, the wind coming off of the screen now at 60 miles an hour, 100 kilometers an hour, it's relatively clean, to be honest. I mean, compared to the buffety, roaring racket I used to get off the KTM, that's definitely an improvement. Take it up to 70. There's a bit more noise. I'm getting a little bit of wind roar around the visor. To be honest, I duck my head down a bit, it goes away, and ultimately that's way more peaceful than it was on my KTM 1090 Adventure. And now that we're at 5,000 RPM, 6th gear, again, tiny buzz through the pegs, not really anything through the seat, and maybe the most minuscule of hums through the handlebars. Gear changes nice and snickety. On and off the gas, there is a little bit more jerkiness than I'm used to, a little bit more jerkiness than I had on the KTM. The fueling on that bike was delightful, to be honest. With the stock can, it sounds good as well. Now, this bike has no quick shifter fitted, but clutchless shifts are nice and easy, very quick, very precise. Tips in well. Oh, there you go, there's the jerk back on the throttle. That's something I would have to really get used to. Not sure how happy I feel about that after that being one of the basic downfalls of my Yamaha FZ1. That horrible jerky on and off the throttle feeling. But yeah, I can see motorway cruising being nice and easy. a very comfortable place to be. I mean, the seat is very firm. It's got a slight forward lean, but because of this big, straight, flat, rally-style bench seat, I can move all the way back, all the way forwards. I can get my weight forwards if I want to get the front end heavy in the dirt. I can get my weight back if I want to get the front end light in the sand. Or I can just sit in the middle if I want to be comfortable on the tarmac. Brakes feel pretty good. Again, obviously not the monstrous stoppers, the monstrous radial mounted Brembo beasts that I had on the KTM, but they definitely seem to be doing the job. Fair bit of fork dive, but that's to be expected with, I think this has 220 mils of treble up front, which again is a bit more than on the normal Tenere. I think the normal Tenere has 190, and this one, the World Raid, has 230 on the back. I think the Tenere again has about 30 centimeters less. I think I've verkacked this as well, going the wrong way. Impressive turning circle for a bike that feels so big. So with a bit of fine throttle control, you can actually deal with that on-off throttle thing. It's going to be a case of just getting used to the bike, I suppose. Yeah, once you know where the point is, you can thread it in much more smoothly. While I'm on this boring slow bit, see how it feels stood up? Seems like there's some good space here. Some room for me to move around, forwards and backwards. Big wide tank to get my knees into for some leverage. Bars seem like they're in a pretty good position as well. Maybe they could be rocked up a little bit, but yeah, that actually feels in the standing position more comfortable already now than my KTM was after I'd put bar risers and twisted the bars. So could be made even better still. Obviously, because of the wired throttle, there's no cruise control on this bike. Have to get something like an Atlas throttle lock, which I do have, so if I were to get one of these, the Atlas throttle lock would definitely be going on it. Nothing like being able to give up the throttle duties to a device so you can rest your right hand on those long motorway stretches. Seating position as well is actually a bit more comfortable, I think, than the Aprilia Touareg that I tried yesterday. My legs have less of a bend in the knee. My feet, I think, are slightly further forward, so it is a much more neutral sitting position. And at slow speed, despite everything I've heard about the World Raid being a bit more top-heavy than the standard Tenere, it doesn't feel nearly as tippy as the 1090 Adventure did. I think that was just so much of a much bigger bike that there was just much more weight up top, even though the tanks were quite low slung. Yeah, it does actually feel quite good. And I've managed to find traffic. Terrific. The real question is, does it filter? Yeah, the answer is yes, it does filter. Oh, bit of dirt. There we go, that's the off-roading tested. Yeah, very easy in the traffic, very light feeling. Doesn't feel at all toppily like I expected it to. Even though it's the stock cam, it does sound nice. Nice little blarty, typical twin sort of brap. Plenty of juice to beat the traffic off at the lights as well. Now, of course, there is the question, obviously, with this bike of price, and as far as I know, it's starting in Europe at the moment, at least, at about 12,500 euros, which does, unfortunately, actually put this outside of my price bracket. I mean, they're going to have to do some serious trickery to let me take this bike away new. It's an error of the salesman, isn't it, when you don't ask the budget of the person who's testing the bike, because ultimately this doesn't really tell me enough to know everything I need to know about the T7 to make a choice about a standard one, and you have to try one of those as well. With that 12.5 brings the bike in at roughly 2.5 more than the standard bike. But unfortunately, I would say I'm pleasantly surprised so far by how this bike feels. Obviously, I can't take it off-road during this test ride. I'm not good enough off-road to really feel confident enough to do that with somebody else's brand new bike, especially bearing the €2,500 excess that I've got hanging over my head right now. That also is obviously just not allowed. So I can't say how different that extra 16Ks feel over the normal bike, and I can't say how this wider tank feels over the normal bike in an off-road situation, but so far already I do feel that it does feel a lot lighter than my old KTM was. Tips in nicely as well, regardless of that 21-inch front wheel. So obviously I had a 19 on the front of my old Austrian Orange Wonder. Some nice options on the dash here, flitting through average fuel, coolant temperature, air temperature, trip 1, trip 2, trip 2 again, trip CD, whatever that is, instant fuel economy and average fuel, yeah, all the stuff you need, with the little joggy wheel on the thumb here on the right, which is a bit difficult to use properly with the keeping the throttle on, but there you go, maybe you're not supposed to do that while you're moving. I've got to say, I'm really impressed with this engine. It's just so smooth. Considering it's a plucky little twin, it is incredibly smooth, but I remember being impressed with it when I tested out the MT-07 a long time ago. It's just got all the poke I need, to be honest, and that regardless of the extra weight that this bike has. I mean, obviously if I were to get something like this, there would definitely be a bit of weight reduction potential, wouldn't there? I mean, for starters, lithium battery in it, save yourself 4 kilos. New end count on the back, save yourself 5 kilos. Well, maybe 4. This one's a bit smaller than most. Switch the mirrors out for something lighter, save yourself another half a kilo. There's potential there. But yeah, this little motor, it's just so smooth. And the power is so linear, and although it probably sounds a bit boring, accessible. I haven't yet discovered a horrible power band or a big surge. And to be completely honest, I don't know if I need to be accelerating any faster than that anyway. All the rules are getting tighter, all the speed limits are getting slower, all the speed cameras are getting sharper. I want to keep my license for as long as possible, and I think something like this would have a double-edged method of helping me to achieve that, because for a start, I'm not going to be smashing around at 150 miles an hour with just the blink of an eye like I would have been on the old 1090 with its 125 horses, or something bigger like a batshit crazy 1290. And also, because this thing is a bit more geared up for heading into the dirt, I'm probably going to want to do that kind of thing a lot more often with a bike like this. And if you're off the road, you can't get caught by the police or the speed cameras, can you? Plus, everything happens a hell of a lot slower. Well, it did for me on my last off-road excursion on the KTM just before it got destroyed and sent to its early grave. Incidentally, it hasn't been sent to an early grave. It was an economical write-off, and I just didn't have the patience, the time, the space to repair it myself, and also there was the very real chance that the swing arm or the frame might have been bent because it got shunted from the back. Now, unfortunately, with these city centre based test rides, I'm not going to be able to get out into the twisties, I'm not going to be able to get out into the country roads, although to be honest, around Hamburg they're pretty pants anyway. But still, I mean, this is a bend, I suppose. The bike does feel like it tips in quite well, smooths out these drain hole covers pretty nicely. And there are definitely, throughout this ride so far, less vibrations than on the Touareg yesterday. That's something that does make me think maybe going Japanese is the way. You've got the reliability, you've got the availability of parts, you've got the availability of servicing. The bike's been around longer, so there's more experience of people on the forums of stuff that's gone wrong, stuff that you can do, ways that you can improve them. But the fact that there's less buzziness, less vibes, once you've been in the saddle for 8 hours on a long touring day, those vibrations do get tiresome. I mean, the Honda CB1000R that I had before the KTM, the buzziness didn't bother me at first, but after a long day, it's just like Chinese water torture. It just gets to you. And speaking of get to you, I am starting to feel a little bit of pressure on the old bum bones from the seat. It is a little bit narrow. It could do with being just an inch or two wider, just to spread this weight out over my not voluptuous arse a bit better. But then again, if the bike's right, there are comfort seats available. I know that Touratech has one for an eye-wincing price of 500 euros. But still, if it makes the perfect bike, then it's money well spent, isn't it? Another impressive thing, despite being kind of semi in town, I'm getting 4.7 litres per 100 kilometres on the efficiency here. That's actually pretty impressive, considering I've been dicking around and accelerating off the lights and all that kind of nonsense. I think this is the point at which I'm going to have to turn around because that looks rubbish. And head back the way from whence I came. I had a good opportunity there to tip the bike over as I misjudged the biting point of the clutch on the U-turn, and I was already on full lock, but yeah, the tippiness isn't nearly as bad as I thought it would be. Tippiness is a real word. Yep, I do actually really like it. That throttling is a bit annoying. I don't know how much there is that you can do about that. I don't know whether an ECU remap would take care of that kind of stuff. But this big dirt bike feeling just makes me want to cheekily push to the front of all these queues like I haven't done very often for a long time. display is actually really nice as well. I like that it's defaulted to the dark setting. I don't know why manufacturers have it with a white one. It always looks shit. It's very clear to see. I was about to say the refresh rate on the needle is really good, but then I revved it and it just jumped instantly to 5,000 RPM. So yeah, for quick changes the refresh rate isn't that great. But there you go. I suppose it's always going to be better than an LCD display, isn't it? Here we go, on the rough inside edge of this road, the suspension is smoothing everything out really nicely. Even the bumps that are coming through, all the edges are taken off. I mean, obviously this isn't a motocross track or anything, so it's a bit of a crap test of the suspension to just go on the edge of the motorway, but it's the best I can do, I'm afraid. What else is there that I really want to know if I'm thinking about buying this bike? Yeah, the seat needs to go. I like the riding position. I like the comfortable feeling of the knees. Foot pegs are nice. Obviously gaining more legroom by taking off those rubber jobbies. The on and off the throttle, I'm sad to say, typical Yamaha with a bit of jerkiness in there. I thought they'd fix that, but that's obviously only with the ride-by-wire bikes. When I tested the Tracer 9 last year, the throttling on that was a vast improvement over all of my experiences with Yamaha. Bit of a shame that it hasn't travelled over onto this bike. I don't know, maybe the 2023 Tenere models, the standard ones, are different, and you can work around it. I think maybe with practice, and I'm getting better at it, but there's definitely that moment of, as it chops back in. Long sweepy bend, feels very secure, very stable, no wobbliness, no weirdness. Again, that wasn't the fastest bend, but no feeling of squirreliness from that massive front wheel. Yeah, plenty of poke for the quick overtake. Plenty enough for me anyway. All of you power hounds out there, the 75 horses that this thing has obviously aren't going to be enough, although I firmly believe that in a lot of the cases, for many people it's all about the numbers on the paper more than it is about the performance of the bike, because once your traction control and your anti-wheelie and all that kind of stuff has robbed your bike of the power that you're trying to put down, there really isn't as much as you think left. And also, I like the idea of, instead of having a bike where I'm just lazily lobbing it around the place, gently humming the engine, barely even touching the sides, I like the idea of an engine where I can use 80% of the performance and I actually have fun trying to get as much out of it as possible. Almost back to the days of, you know, back when you had a 200cc bike, or a 150cc was my first proper bike. The thing was so gutless, you really had to be clever about carrying your speed through the bends, otherwise you just wouldn't have any. So the idea of having a bike where I can use all of the available performance and really feel like I'm riding the thing does sound attractive to me. And so far, the feel I'm getting from this bike is exactly that. It's got a really nice clutch feel as well, especially considering it's a cable clutch. I was a little bit worried about the idea of going away from the hydraulic clutch of the KTM back to a cable one, but this one does feel really nice. So as long as you keep that cable clean, well oiled, looked after, that'll hopefully never change. I do actually really like this carbon flake effect moulding on the tank surrounds here on the sides. You can't really see them from here. I think they're a really nice touch. I like that texture. Also, really like the look of this dash area. I mean, you cannot deny, and you simply can't get away from the fact that twin tanks looks absolutely incredible. It looks so cool. And one thing I can say, with the little off-roading experience I do have, you're concerned about the extra weight, but you want to have the extra range, which is a situation that I definitely find myself in. I have to ride absolutely friggin' miles to get to the good roads. So with the standard 16-litre tank, I would be filling up way more often, and the big tanks would give me much more range, which would make everything a lot more enjoyable. I mean, bearing in mind there might be the I need to go off here. There might be the good argument that with the seat being a bit more uncomfortable than I'm used to, then a smaller tank would be better. But anyway, one thing I have found is when I was in Norway doing tech trail stuff, dipping my toe in the off-road world at the beginning of this year, my KTM had a 23-litre tank, same size as the ones on this. And because I was close to the trails, and I knew that I wasn't going to be covering massive miles, I actually only half filled the tanks. So every day, instead of putting 23 litres in, I put in 11.5, which means that I was saving just under 9 kilos in high up weight on the bike, just by not putting as much fuel in, because I didn't need it. And that is exactly the same thing that you could probably do with this. So then your 16 kilos of extra weight with a half full tank suddenly goes down to 8 kilos of extra weight, which really isn't so bad. Which again, coming back to the argument of stick a lithium battery in it, change the can, you've almost cancelled it out and got yourself the same weight as a standard Tenere. I think I'm just trying to sell this bike to myself now, and I mean, so far it does have almost everything I need. The question is, where am I going to find that extra $2.5 grand? Because it sure as hell ain't coming from the insurance. Yeah, I can't really think of anything else to say on this quick short test ride. It's only been, what, I've been on the bike for 40 minutes. My bottom is, I wouldn't say it's getting uncomfortable, I wouldn't say it's getting painful, but I can feel that it's heading slightly in that direction. So I would say probably this seat is maybe an hour-and-a-half seat at best. Get a bit of blood back in the old pins. It's really comfortable stood up. That's oh shit. But yeah, overall I'm really impressed by this bike from this little test ride. I would love to be able to have one for a bit longer, actually take one into the twisties for a day, maybe even take one onto some more slippery stuff, but unfortunately up here in northern Germany it's very difficult to get test rides and to do that kind of thing. But yeah, well, there we go, that's us back where we started, and that is the Yamaha Tenere World Raid. Yeah, I'm actually more impressed with that than I thought I was going to be. From such a short test ride, so far I'd say that this bike definitely spoke to me more than the Aprilia Tuareg did. Although, to be fair, the test ride bike that I had for the Aprilia Tuareg had a buckled front wheel, so it wasn't really a fair test. I think I might have to revisit that. I've got some stuff to think about, and I'm pretty sure the guy in the showroom is about to try and give me his hard sell on why I should definitely buy this bike, and who knows? If he gives me a good enough price, maybe he'll get a deal. But I don't think he's going to like how much money I've got in my bank account. But anyway, thank you so very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, do give it a thumbs up. If you really enjoyed it, share it with somebody else that you think might like it. And I will see you in the next one. So until then, keep your shiny. I'll see you out there. Ta-ra.